Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for more stories. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Brian Sheffield's hands gripped the steering wheel as he navigated through evening traffic. His daughter Lily's backpack was wedged between the passenger seat and the center console. The 8-year-old sat in the back seat, unusually quiet, her small fingers clutching the worn teddy bear she'd had since birth. His wife, Natalie, sat beside him, her jaw set in that familiar hard line that meant the conversation was over before it began. They'd been arguing about this visit for 4 days. Lily hadn't stayed at her grandmother Marjorie Pembroke's house in over 7 months, not since late spring when she'd come home with nightmares that lasted for weeks. Brian had put his foot down then, but Natalie had a way of eroding his defenses through silent treatment and calculated remarks about his overprotectiveness. "She's my mother," Natalie had said that morning, her tone sharp. "Lily needs to learn respect. You're turning her into a weak little thing who can't handle anything." Brian had tried a different approach. "Then let's all go together. Make it a family visit." "My mother doesn't want you there." Natalie's words were surgical, designed to cut. "She wants time with her granddaughter without you hovering." The truth was more complicated. Marjorie had made her disapproval of Brian clear from the moment Natalie brought him home 9 years ago. He wasn't from money, didn't have the pedigree Marjorie had envisioned for her daughter. Brian had built his architectural firm from nothing, worked brutal hours to provide for his family. But to Marjorie, he would always be the contractor's son who got lucky. "Daddy," Lily's small voice broke his thoughts. "Do I have to?" Before Brian could answer, Natalie twisted in her seat. "We've been through this, Lily. Grandma is expecting you." "But she's mean." Lily's voice cracked. "She makes me do stuff." Natalie's voice could freeze water. "You're going, and you're going to behave." Brian caught his daughter's eyes in the rearview mirror. They were filling with tears, and something in his chest tightened. "Lily, sweetheart, what does Grandma make you do?" "Brian, don't," Natalie warned. "I'm asking my daughter a question. You're undermining me again." Natalie's fingers drummed against her thigh, a nervous habit she'd developed in the past year. "My mother follows certain rules. Structure. Discipline. Things Lily needs because you're too soft with her." The Pembroke estate loomed ahead, a sprawling colonial on 5 acres in the wealthy suburbs of Bergen County. Marjorie had inherited the property from her own mother, along with a trust fund that had defined her entire worldview. Brian had learned early in his marriage that money wasn't just comfort to the Pembrokes. It was proof of moral superiority. As they pulled into the circular driveway, Lily's breathing quickened. "Daddy, please." Her voice shook. "I'll be good. I'll do whatever you want. Please don't leave me here." "Stop being dramatic," Natalie snapped. But Brian was already turning around, reaching for his daughter's hand. "Lily, listen to me, we're already late." Natalie unbuckled her seat belt with sharp, angry movements. "Get out of the car, Lily." "No." Lily's scream was primal, raw with terror. "Daddy, don't leave me here. Please." The sound of Natalie's palm against Lily's cheek cracked through the car like a sharp snap. Brian's entire body went rigid with shock. "Stop," Natalie commanded, her hand still raised. Time seemed to freeze. Brian stared at his wife, this woman he'd shared his life with, built a home with, and saw a stranger. Lily's sobs filled the silence. Small, broken sounds that tore at him. "Did you just hit our daughter?" His voice was dangerously quiet. She was hysterical. Natalie didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "My mother is right there watching from the window. What would she think?" Brian looked at the house and saw Marjorie Pembroke standing behind the front curtains, perfectly still. Watching. Not rushing out to help. Just watching. "We're leaving." Brian started the engine. "We are not." Natalie grabbed his arm. "If you drive away now, you're telling Lily she can manipulate you with tears and tantrums. You're teaching her weakness." "I'm teaching her that she doesn't have to go somewhere she's terrified of going. She's terrified because you've coddled her." Natalie's eyes flashed. "Do you know what my mother thinks? She thinks you're raising Lily to be useless, soft, unable to handle real life. Your mother is watching our daughter scream in terror and hasn't moved to help. What does that tell you?" Natalie's jaw tightened. She grabbed her purse and opened the door. "Fine. I'll take her in myself. You go home and feel superior." Before Brian could stop her, Natalie had opened Lily's door and was pulling their daughter from the car. Lily reached back toward Brian, her face wet with tears, her small hand grasping at air. "Daddy!" Brian jumped out, moving around the car, but Natalie was already marching Lily toward the house. His daughter's legs barely worked, her body limp with panic as Natalie dragged her forward. "Natalie, stop!" Brian's voice carried across the driveway. "I mean it. Bring her back to the car." His wife whirled on him. "Go home, Brian. This is between the Pembroke women. You've never understood that. You've never understood us." Marjorie Pembroke opened the front door. She was 66, rail-thin, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her expression was carved from ice. "Brian." Her voice was clipped, dismissive. "How kind of you to drop Lily off. We'll take excellent care of her." "Mrs. Pembroke, Lily doesn't want to stay. Maybe we should dash. Children rarely want what's good for them." Marjorie's thin lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's why they need proper guidance. Something I'm providing since my daughter married beneath her." The insult landed exactly as it was meant to. Brian felt his temper rise, but forced himself to breathe. Getting angry wouldn't help Lily. "I'd like to speak with my daughter," he said evenly. "No." Natalie's word was final. "You've done enough damage. Go home, Brian. I'll bring Lily back tomorrow evening." Lily's cries had faded to whimpers. She stood between her mother and grandmother, small and defeated, her bear hanging from one hand. When she looked at Brian, her eyes held something he'd never seen before. Resignation. That look haunted him as Marjorie's hand closed on Lily's shoulder and they disappeared into the massive house. The door clicked shut with finality. Natalie walked back to the car, her heels ticking on the pavement. She slid into the passenger seat without looking at him. "Drive." Brian's hands shook as he started the engine. "If anything happens to her, Dash, nothing is going to happen to her. My mother raised me perfectly well." Brian thought about the woman sitting next to him, the way she'd changed over the past 3 years, becoming harder, colder. The way she spoke to Lily now, always finding fault. The criticism that never stopped. The impossible standards. He thought about Natalie's childhood stories, the ones she used to tell him when they first married, stories she'd presented as funny anecdotes about her strict upbringing. But they had always made Brian's skin crawl. Being locked in her room for hours over minor infractions, meals withheld as punishment, character-building exercises that sounded a lot like harm. "Did your mother hit you?" The question came out before he could stop it. Natalie's silence was answer enough. "Natalie Dash, it made me strong," she said finally. "It made me successful. Look at me, Brian. I run a nonprofit that handles millions in funding. I sit on 3 boards. I'm everything my mother raised me to be." "You're miserable," Brian said quietly. "And now you're making Lily miserable." "I'm making her resilient." But Natalie's voice wavered slightly. "She'll thank me when she's older." Brian drove them home in silence. Their house in Ridgewood was a far cry from the Pembroke estate, but it was theirs, or it had been, before Natalie started comparing it unfavorably to her childhood home. Before every dinner became a critique session. Before family started meaning something dark and twisted. They arrived home at 6:10 p.m. Natalie disappeared into her home office to work on grant applications, her way of avoiding conversation. Brian tried to distract himself with blueprints for a new commercial project, but his mind kept drifting to Lily. He'd built his firm, Sheffield Architecture, from scratch. Started as a draftsman for a construction company, took night classes, worked insane hours, and slowly built a reputation for innovative design that balanced aesthetics with structural integrity. He'd won awards, landed major contracts, proved everyone who doubted him wrong. But none of that mattered if he couldn't protect his daughter. His phone sat on the desk, silent. He picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. Natalie had said they'd bring Lily home tomorrow evening. About 20 hours. He could last 20 hours. Except he couldn't shake that look in Lily's eyes. That resignation. At 9, he texted Natalie. "Can you call and check on Lily?" The response came 6 minutes later. "She's fine. Stop hovering." At 10:15, he went to bed but didn't sleep. Natalie came in around 12:40 a.m., slipping under the covers without a word. Brian lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, listening to his wife's breathing even out into sleep. How had they gotten here? He thought back to their early years when Natalie had seemed so different, ambitious, yes, but also warm, laughing. She'd loved his passion for architecture, his drive to build something meaningful. They'd been partners. But after Lily was born, something shifted. Natalie started spending more time with Marjorie. Started talking about proper upbringing and high standards. Started finding fault with Brian's parenting. The warmth bled away, replaced by a brutal perfectionism that made their home feel like a museum, beautiful but cold. He must have dozed off sometime after that, because when his phone rang at 9:23 p.m. the next evening, it jolted him from an anxious half-sleep. The screen showed an unknown number. "Hello, is this Brian Sheffield?" A woman's voice, professional, concerned. "Yes. Who is this?" "Sir, my name is Nurse Karen McBride. I'm calling from Hackensack University Medical Center. Your daughter Lily walked into our ER about 25 minutes ago alone." Brian was already moving, pulling on jeans, searching for his shoes. "What, is she okay? What happened?" "She won't speak to us, sir. But she has something clutched in her hand, and she won't let go. We need parental consent to examine her properly. And, sir, I think you should get here right away." "I'm coming. Don't let anyone else near her. No one except hospital staff." "Sir, is there something I should know? Just keep her safe. I'll be there in 25 minutes. He disconnected and grabbed his keys. Natalie appeared in the doorway, hair mussed from sleep. "What's wrong?" "Lily is at the hospital. She walked in alone." Natalie's face went pale. "That's impossible. She's at my mother's." "Then how did she get to Hackensack?" Brian pushed past her. "I'm coming with you." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "You stay here. Call your mother. Find out what the hell happened." He didn't wait for a response. He took the stairs 2 at a time, burst out the front door, and threw himself into his car. The engine roared to life, and he pulled onto the street faster than he should have. The route to the hospital was burned into his brain. He'd driven it when Lily was born, during her bout with pneumonia at age 5, for routine checkups. But he'd never driven it like this, weaving through traffic, pushing past 85 on the highway, his heart hammering against his ribs. How had Lily gotten out? Marjorie's estate was miles from any main road. How had an 8-year-old found her way to a hospital in a different town? And what wasn't she saying? His phone rang. "Natalie, my mother isn't answering." Her voice shook. "Brian, what if something what? He snapped. "What if your mother did exactly what I was afraid she'd do?" He heard the anger in his own voice and didn't care. "I told you Lily didn't want to stay there. She was screaming, Natalie. Screaming. Don't you dare blame me for this." "Then who do I blame? You're the one who slapped her. You're the one who forced her inside." Silence. Then, quietly, "If you're suggesting my mother would hurt Lily Dash, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm going to find out what happened." He ended the call and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. Brian abandoned his car in a spot marked for ambulances and sprinted toward the ER entrance. The automatic doors seemed to take forever to open. Inside, the reception area was bright and sterile. A security guard looked up, but Brian was already at the desk. "Lily Sheffield, my daughter, where is she?" The receptionist checked her computer. "Room 9. I'll take you." Brian was already moving, following the signs, his footsteps echoing on the linoleum. He passed examination rooms, a waiting area, a nurse's station. Then he saw her. Lily sat on a hospital bed, her legs dangling over the edge, her pink dress dirty and torn at the hem. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with dried tears. But when she saw Brian, her whole face transformed. "Daddy." She launched herself off the bed and into his arms. Brian caught her, pulling her close, feeling her small body shake with sobs. He dropped to his knees so they were eye level, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. That's when he saw her arm. His entire world narrowed to a single point, the inside of Lily's left forearm, from wrist to elbow. Circular injury marks, evenly spaced, deliberate. The pattern was unmistakable. Someone had held her down and pressed something hot against her skin multiple times. Brian's vision blurred at the edges. His hands trembled as he gently touched the area around the marks, and Lily flinched. "Who did this?" His voice didn't sound like his own. "Lily, sweetheart, who hurt you?" Lily's free hand opened, and something fell into Brian's palm. A small voice recorder, the kind people used for dictation, old-fashioned, with tiny cassette tapes. It was still running, the little wheels turning slowly. Brian looked at his daughter's face. She was trying to tell him something, her eyes urgent despite her silence. "Did you record something, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Lily nodded. A nurse approached Karen McBride, based on her name tag. She was in her 40s with kind eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Sheffield, we need to examine her injuries properly. And, sir, those marks are serious. This is going to require a police report. Brian pulled out his phone with shaking hands. His finger hovered over Natalie's number, then moved to 911 instead. This is Brian Sheffield. I'm at Hackensack University Medical Center with my 8-year-old daughter. She has what appear to be injury marks from intentional harm. I need police here immediately. As he gave the details to the dispatcher, he kept his other arm around Lily, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. In his palm, the voice recorder continued spinning, holding whatever nightmare she'd endured. He thought about Natalie's words, "My mother raised me perfectly well." He thought about Lily's screams in the driveway. He thought about Marjorie's cold eyes watching from the window. And he made a promise silent, absolute. Whatever had happened in that house, whoever was responsible, they would pay for every mark on his daughter's skin. The police arrived within 18 minutes. Sergeant Paul Rivera was a veteran with gray at his temples and the careful manner of someone who'd worked too many child abuse cases. His partner, Officer Jenna Rivera, his daughter, Brian learned later, looked fresh out of the academy, but had sharp, observant eyes. They set up in a private consultation room while hospital staff tended to Lily's arm. Brian had wanted to stay with her, but Lily had whispered her first words since arriving. "Play the tape, Daddy. Make them hear." Now Brian sat across from the officers, the voice recorder on the table between them. His hands were still shaking. "Before we listen to this," Sergeant Rivera said, "I need you to walk me through what happened. From the beginning." Brian told them everything. The argument about the visit, Lily's terror, Natalie's slap, Marjorie Pembroke's cold welcome, the 20 hours of worry, the call from the hospital. "And you have no idea how your daughter got from Bergen County to this hospital?" Jenna Rivera asked. "None. It's at least 17 miles. She's 8 years old." Paul Rivera made notes. "That's a long way for a child, especially at night. We'll need to reconstruct her route. But first," he gestured to the recorder, "let's hear what she wanted us to hear." Brian pressed play. Static crackled. Then Lily's voice, small and scared. "Daddy said I should always tell the truth. So I'm recording the truth." More static. Sounds of movement. Fabric rustling. Then Lily again, quieter now. "Grandma says I have to learn discipline. She says Mommy was bad when she was little and she fixed her. Now she has to fix me." Brian's jaw clenched. On the tape, a door opened. Marjorie Pembroke's voice crisp, cold. "Stand up straight, Lily. Slouching is a sign of weak character." "Yes, Grandma. Your mother tells me you've been disobedient at home." Talking back. Refusing to follow simple instructions. "I didn't mean to." Silence. "When I'm speaking, you listen. This is the first rule. Do you understand?" A pause. Then Lily, barely audible. "Yes, Grandma. Today you will learn what happens when Pembroke women forget their place. Your mother learned these lessons. Now it's your turn." The recording captured sounds that made Brian's blood run cold. Footsteps, a drawer opening. Marjorie's voice, matter of fact. "Hold out your arm." "No, please. I'll be good." Discipline requires discomfort. Discomfort teaches what words cannot. "Hold out your arm, or I'll get the cord." "Grandma, please." The sound of a struggle. Lily crying. Then a sharp, hissing sound followed by a scream that punched straight through Brian's chest. "Stop moving," Marjorie commanded. "Each time you move, we add another mark. Do you understand?" Sobbing. "Yes. Yes, Grandma." Another hiss. Another scream. "That's two. Do you know why you're being disciplined, Lily?" Because I'm bad. Because you need to learn respect. Because your father has made you soft. Because Pembroke women understand that strength comes through suffering." More hissing sounds. More screams. Brian's fingernails dug into his palms so hard he drew blood. Officer Jenna Rivera had gone pale. Her father's expression was carved from stone. Then Marjorie's voice again. "Go to your room. You'll sleep here tonight. No dinner. Tomorrow morning we'll discuss your other infractions." The recording captured Lily's footsteps, her soft crying, a door closing. Several minutes of silence, then rustling. Lily must have pulled out the recorder. "Daddy," she whispered into the device. "Grandma used the metal tool from the fireplace, the one for moving logs. She heated it, and then she put it on my arm 8 times because I'm 8 years old." A long pause. When Lily spoke again, her voice was different, older, somehow harder. "I waited until she was asleep. The window in my room doesn't lock right. I climbed down the tree like you showed me at our house. I walked to the road and followed it. A nice lady in a car stopped and asked if I was okay. I told her I needed a hospital. She wanted to call the police, but I said, no, just hospital. I had to get to you, Daddy. I had to show you what Grandma did because Mommy said you wouldn't believe me if I just told you. She said, you always think we're lying. The recording ended with a click. The silence in the consultation room was absolute. Brian couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All he could see was his 8-year-old daughter, terrified, climbing out a window in the dark and walking 17 miles because she believed her own mother wouldn't protect her. Mr. Sheffield? Sergeant Rivera's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? Brian looked up. That's my wife's mother, Marjorie Pembroke. She lives at 912 Willow Ridge Drive in Bergen County. Jenna Rivera was already on her radio calling for backup, requesting a warrant, alerting local PD. Her father leaned forward. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know about this? Did you suspect? I suspected something was wrong at that house. Lily always came back different after visits. Quiet, anxious. But I never imagined. Brian's voice broke. How could I have known it was this bad? Your wife, Sergeant Rivera said carefully. On the recording, your daughter said her mother told her you wouldn't believe her. Does that concern you? Brian thought about Natalie's insistence that Lily stay at Marjorie's house. Her anger when he questioned it. Her slap in the car. The way she defended her mother's discipline. Yes, he said finally. It concerns me very much. We're going to need to speak with your wife. She's at home, Brian said. Probably trying to reach her mother right now. Jenna Rivera stepped away from her radio. Local PD is en route to the Pembroke residence. They'll take Mrs. Pembroke into custody. We'll need to interview your wife as well. She hesitated. Mr. Sheffield, given what we've heard on that recording, there's a possibility your wife could face charges too. Child endangerment. Failure to protect. Brian felt something cold settle in his chest. His wife. His partner. The mother of his child. Do whatever you need to do, he said. I want everyone responsible for this to face consequences. The officers exchanged glances. Sergeant Rivera nodded slowly. We'll need to take the recorder as evidence, and we'll need a formal statement from you and from Lily when she's ready. Whatever you need, Brian said. But I need to see my daughter. Of course. Paul Rivera pulled out a card. This is the number for Child Protective Services. They'll likely open an investigation. Standard procedure in cases like this. They'll want to ensure Lily is safe going forward. She'll be with me, Brian said. No one else. That may not be your decision to make, Mr. Sheffield. If CPS determines that both parents were negligent I was negligent, Brian interrupted. I knew something was wrong, and I let my wife pressure me anyway. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have protected Lily better. He stood. But that ends now. From this moment forward, my daughter's safety is the only thing that matters. He found Lily in an examination room, her arm bandaged, a child life specialist sitting beside her with a coloring book. When Lily saw Brian, she slid off the table and wrapped her arms around his waist. Did you listen to it? She asked. I did, sweetheart. You were so brave to record that. So brave to walk all that way to get help. The lady who gave me a ride was nice, Lily said. Her name was Melissa. She has a daughter, too. Brian made a mental note to find Melissa and thank her. Lily, the police are going to talk to you. They're going to ask you questions about what happened at Grandma's house. Can you be brave and answer them? Lily looked up at him, her eyes ancient in her small face. Is Grandma going to jail? I hope so, baby. I really hope so. Good. Lily's voice went hard. She hurt Mommy too when Mommy was little. Mommy told me. She said it made her strong, but Daddy, I don't feel strong. I just feel scared. Brian knelt down, eye to eye with his daughter. Being scared doesn't mean you're not strong. You climbed out a window. You walked 17 miles in the dark. You recorded proof that's going to help put a stop to this. Lily, you're the strongest person I know. A tear rolled down Lily's cheek. Is Mommy mad at me? The question gutted him. No, sweetheart. No one is mad at you. But even as he said it, he wondered if it was true. Natalie had been trying to reach him 9 missed calls, 14 texts. He hadn't looked at any of them. Didn't want to, because he knew what they would say. Deflection, excuses, blame. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. Natalie, Brian, answer me. My mother is saying the police are at her house. What did you do? Natalie, Brian, this is insane. Lily is fine. She's always been dramatic. Natalie, you're overreacting. This is going to destroy our family. Natalie, call me right now. Brian turned off his phone. Over the next few hours, the pieces fell into place with grim efficiency. Local PD arrested Marjorie Pembroke at her estate. She tried to deny everything until they played the recording, at which point she switched tactics, claiming she was within her rights to discipline her granddaughter, that this was how proper families operated, that Brian was a lower-class interloper trying to destroy a respectable family. None of it worked. The marks on Lily's arm spoke for themselves. The recording was damning, and when police searched Marjorie's house, they found the fireplace tools still set aside. Natalie arrived at the hospital at 12:20 a.m., her face pale, her movements jerky. She tried to enter Lily's room, but Brian blocked the doorway. You're not seeing her. She's my daughter. Natalie's voice cracked. Brian, please. I need to explain. Explain what? How you knew your mother was harmful, and you sent Lily there anyway. How you slapped our daughter when she begged not to go. How you told her I wouldn't believe her if she reported what happened. I never said that. Lily recorded it. Natalie, your mother said it on the tape. Lily said you told her I wouldn't believe her. Natalie's composure crumbled. My mother is lying. She's trying to dash. Your mother is in custody. She's going to be charged with aggravated child abuse. Brian stepped closer. And you? You're going to answer some questions from the police about what you knew and when you knew it. I didn't know she would actually hurt Lily. I thought she might be strict, make her follow rules, but not dash. Natalie pressed her hands to her face. My mother never went that far with me. Didn't she? Brian's voice stayed low, controlled, but fury burned beneath every word. You said she made you strong. You defended her methods. You called Lily weak for being afraid. He stared at her. Did your mother do this to you too, Natalie? The flicker in Natalie's eyes was answer enough. Oh my God. Brian felt sick. She did. Natalie whispered. I survived. I'm successful. I'm dash. You're damaged. Brian said no cruelty, just fact. Your mother broke something in you, and instead of getting help, you were going to let her break our daughter too. Natalie reached for him, but he stepped back. Brian, please. I love Lily. I love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. No. The word was final. You made a choice. You chose your mother over our daughter. You chose old pain over Lily's safety. There's no fixing that. You can't keep her from me. I'm her mother. Actually, I can. Child Protective Services is involved now. The police are involved. And I'm filing for emergency custody and divorce first thing Tuesday morning. He'd made the decision somewhere between hearing Lily's screams on the recording and seeing Natalie's texts. You'll have supervised visitation at best and only if Lily wants to see you. You can't do this. Officer Jenna Rivera appeared at the end of the hallway. Mrs. Sheffield, we need to ask you some questions. Natalie looked from the officer to Brian, panic blooming in her eyes. Brian, don't let them dash. Answer their questions honestly, Brian said. It's the least you can do. He turned his back on her and returned to Lily's room, closing the door on his wife's protests. Lily was asleep, curled on her side, her bandaged arm resting on a pillow. The child life specialist had gone, leaving Brian alone with his daughter. He pulled a chair close to the bed and watched her breathe, his mind racing through everything that needed to happen next. Tomorrow, he'd call Corey Donahue, the best family law attorney in the state. They'd gone to college together, stayed friends despite their different paths. Corey would know how to protect Lily legally. He'd also need to call his business partner, Carlos Mendoza. Carlos could handle the firm for a few days while Brian dealt with this nightmare. Between them, they'd built Sheffield and Mendoza Architecture into one of the most respected firms in the tri-state area. Carlos would understand. He had 3 daughters of his own, and he needed to find a therapist for Lily, someone who specialized in trauma. Someone who could help his daughter process what had happened and rebuild the sense of safety Marjorie and Natalie had shattered. His phone buzzed. He turned it back on to make necessary calls. Another text from Natalie, but this time different. Natalie, I told the police everything about my childhood, about what my mother did to me, about how I thought it was normal. I'm so sorry, Brian. I'm so sorry. Brian stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't erase the marks on Lily's arm, or the terror in her eyes, or the 17 miles she'd walked alone in the dark because her own mother had failed her. His daughter stirred, her eyes opening. Daddy, I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. Lily's eyes drifted closed again, but her hand found his and held on tight. Brian sat in the dim hospital room holding his daughter's hand and began planning exactly how he would dismantle the Pembroke family piece by piece. Because this wasn't over. The police had Marjorie. They were investigating Natalie. But Brian had spent years building buildings, businesses, systems. He understood structure. He understood how to find weak points and apply pressure until everything collapsed. And he was going to use every skill he had to ensure that Marjorie Pembroke and anyone who enabled her spent the rest of their lives paying for what they'd done to his daughter. The Pembrokes thought money and social standing made them untouchable. Brian Sheffield was about to teach them differently. Tuesday morning arrived with cruel sunshine. Brian had spent the weekend at Lily's side as she was released from the hospital, and CPS conducted their initial interview. As his world reshaped itself around this new reality, Lily was physically healing. The marks would scar, but they'd fade. The emotional damage would take longer. Corey Donahue arrived at Brian's house at 9:10 sharp, carrying a leather briefcase and the kind of focused energy that made him legendary in family court. He was 44, prematurely gray, with the build of someone who worked out his stress through kickboxing. He'd once told Brian that family law was where you went if you wanted to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. "Show me everything," Corey said, declining coffee, settling at Brian's dining room table. Brian laid out the voice recording, the police reports, photos of Lily's injuries, medical documentation, and his own timeline of events. Corey listened without interrupting, his pen moving across a legal pad in sharp, efficient strokes. When Brian finished, Corey sat back. "Okay, here's where we are. Criminal charges against Marjorie Pembroke are solid aggravated child abuse, assault of a child, unlawful restraint. She's looking at 15 to 25 years if convicted. She's already retained Conrad Bray as her attorney." Brian recognized the name. Corey nodded. "He's expensive. He's ruthless. He's very good at getting wealthy clients reduced sentences. But this case Corey tapped the police report. "This is bad, even for him. The recording is devastating. The physical evidence is clear. Unless Bray can somehow get the recording thrown out, which I doubt, Marjorie is going to prison." "Good. As for Natalie," Corey hesitated. "She's cooperating with police. She gave a full statement about her own childhood and admitted she suspected her mother might use similar methods with Lily. That's not quite conspiracy, but it's child endangerment at minimum. The DA is deciding whether to charge her." Brian's jaw tightened. She knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew Lily would be hurt. Legally, that's a gray area. Ethically, Corey shrugged. She failed as a mother. He leaned forward. "But Brian, here's what I need you to understand. If the DA charges Natalie, it makes your custody case easier. If they don't, we'll have to fight harder. I want full custody. No unsupervised visits for Natalie. Nothing for Marjorie ever. That's the goal." Corey flipped through his notes. "Emergency custody is already in place. CPS granted that pending investigation. But for permanent custody, we need to build a case that demonstrates Natalie is either unable or unwilling to protect Lily." Corey tapped the recording summary. Lily saying, "Mommy told me you wouldn't believe me. That's parental alienation and failure to protect. Natalie's cooperation with police actually works in her favor, though. She's showing remorse. Seeking help. She's showing regret that she got caught," Brian said. "Maybe." Corey exhaled. "Family court judges like redemption arcs. They want to believe parents can change. Natalie will hire someone good, and they'll paint her as a victim of her own upbringing who made a terrible mistake. They'll push for therapy, supervised visits, reunification. Over my dead body. That's the fight we're in." Corey's voice hardened. "But Brian, I need you to stay clean. No confrontations with Natalie or Marjorie. No actions that could be construed as vindictive. Document everything, but don't engage. Let me handle the legal warfare." Brian nodded, but his mind was already working. Corey was right about the legal approach, but Brian had other tools at his disposal. Marjorie Pembroke had built her life on reputation and social standing. So had Natalie, to a lesser extent. What if those things were systematically destroyed? After Corey left, Brian made a series of calls. First to Carlos Mendoza. "I need a few weeks," Brian said. "Maybe a month. Can you hold down the firm?" "Of course." Carlos's voice softened. How's Lily? Carlos had visited the hospital Saturday with his wife, Sonia, and their youngest daughter, bringing books and a stuffed elephant that Lily now slept with. She will be. Then Brian dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Adam Pierce, Natalie's brother. Adam was 3 years older than Natalie, lived in Seattle, and rarely came home. He'd left the Pembroke orbit years ago, worked in tech, married a software engineer named Melissa. Coincidentally, the same woman who'd picked up Lily and driven her to the hospital, Brian had learned. Adam had always been quiet at family gatherings, watchful in a way that suggested he saw more than he said. Brian, Adam said, I heard about Lily. Melissa told me she picked up a little girl who turned out to be my niece. Is she okay? Brian swallowed. She's alive. She's hurt. Then he said, Adam, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did your mother hurt you too? A long silence. Then, yes. Would you be willing to testify to that in court if necessary against my mother-in-law and possibly Natalie? She knew what Marjorie was capable of, and she let Lily go there anyway. Jesus. Adam's breath came out shaky. Natalie always defended Marjorie, saying the discipline made us strong. I tried to talk to her about it years ago. I tried to get her to see a therapist, but she shut me down, told me I was being weak. She said the same thing to Lily. I'll testify, Adam said. I'll do whatever you need. I should have done something sooner. I should have warned you about Marjorie before you married Natalie. You couldn't have known how far it would go. Actually, I could have, because it happened to me. She used to hit me, made me kneel on rice for hours, locked me in the basement overnight when I was 10 because I got an A on a math test. Adam's voice hardened. I cut contact when I turned 24 and never looked back. I thought Natalie would protect Lily. I thought she'd break the cycle. She didn't. No, she didn't. And that's on her. Brian, whatever you're planning, legal, personal, whatever I am in, my mother needs to pay. And if Natalie helped her, even passively, she needs to face that, too. After hanging up, Brian sat in his home office looking at his list of contacts. Marjorie Pembroke served on the boards of 3 major charities. She was a member of Ridgewood Country Club, the Garden Society, the Historical Preservation Committee. She had friends in the Chamber of Commerce, the Arts Council, the Symphony Board, and local news. He began making calls, carefully, subtly, just asking questions. Have you heard about the charges against Marjorie Pembroke? No. Oh, I thought surely someone would have mentioned it. Yes, child abuse. Her granddaughter. Quite serious, from what I understand. I only mention it because I know she's involved with your organization, and I thought you might want to be aware. By Wednesday afternoon, Marjorie had been asked to step down from 2 boards pending resolution of her legal issues. By Thursday, the country club had suspended her membership. By Friday, Miles Carver's article hit the front page of the Record. Prominent socialite charged in child abuse case. Recording reveals deliberate harm to 8-year-old granddaughter. The article was devastating in its detail. Miles had obtained copies of the police report, had interviewed neighbors who'd always thought Marjorie was strict but respectable, and had found Adam Pierce, who went on record about his own childhood abuse. The article didn't name Lily. She was protected as a minor, but it named Marjorie, outlined the charges, and included a quote from the DA. This is one of the most disturbing cases of child abuse we've prosecuted in recent memory. Brian's phone exploded with calls, friends expressing support, former colleagues offering help, and, perhaps most gratifyingly, calls from other Pembroke family acquaintances, distant cousins, old friends saying they'd always known something was wrong with Marjorie, but hadn't known how to speak up. Natalie called too. Brian let it go to voicemail. Brian, please. I know you're angry, but this article, it's destroying my career. The foundation is pulling our funding. 3 board members resigned. My reputation is dash, her voice broke. I know I failed Lily. I know I failed you, but I'm getting help. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm trying to understand what my mother did to me and why I thought it was normal. Please just talk to me. Please. Brian deleted the message. Lily was in the living room working on a puzzle with a trauma counselor named Dr. Tessa Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen specialized in childhood trauma and came highly recommended. She'd been working with Lily for 4 days now, gentle and patient, helping Lily process what had happened. Brian watched them through the doorway. Lily was talking more, smiling occasionally. She still flinched at sudden movements and woke up crying most nights, but she was healing. Slowly. Daddy, Lily called out. Can you help us find the corner pieces? Brian joined them on the floor, searching through puzzle pieces, listening to Dr. Nguyen guide Lily through breathing exercises, and felt something settle in his chest. This was what mattered. Not revenge, though that was satisfying. Not Marjorie's legal troubles, though those were deserved. What mattered was Lily feeling safe enough to do a puzzle. Sleeping through the night. Trusting that the adults in her life would protect her. I found one. Lily held up a corner piece triumphantly. Good job, sweetheart. 3 more to go. Lily sorted through the pile with careful concentration. Dr. Nguyen said, when we finish the whole puzzle, we can start a bigger one. One with a castle. That sounds perfect. That night, after Lily was asleep and Dr. Nguyen had left, Brian sat at his computer and began drafting an email to every person he knew in the architectural community. He explained what had happened in broad strokes, protecting Lily's privacy, and mentioned Natalie's role in it. He didn't have to spell it out. The implication was clear. The Pembroke Family Fund, which had been involved in funding several community development projects, was run by someone who'd failed to protect her own daughter. He didn't send it. Not yet. That was nuclear, and he wanted to hold it in reserve. Instead, he opened a different file, a timeline of Marjorie's activities over the past 6 years. Brian had always paid attention at family gatherings, listening when Marjorie bragged about her charitable work, her investments, her social connections. He'd thought he was just making conversation. Now, that information was useful. Marjorie had mentioned a real estate investment trust that she managed for several family members. Brian didn't know the details, but he knew who might. Peter Aldridge, a forensic accountant who'd helped Brian with a complicated commercial development deal 4 years ago. Peter, I need a favor. I need to know if there's anything irregular about a trust managed by Marjorie Pembroke, the woman who was just charged with child abuse. Why do you think there's something irregular? Because people who are cruel in their private lives are often dishonest in their professional lives. And because Marjorie Pembroke has spent 4 decades believing she's above the rules. Peter was quiet for a moment. I need access to financial records. That means subpoenas, legal authority. What if I could get you authorization from one of the trust beneficiaries? Then I could review their portion of the holdings. But, Brian, what are you looking for? Anything that would cause legal problems for Marjorie. Mismanagement, self-dealing, fraud. I want every aspect of her life examined and exposed. This is pretty aggressive. She hurt my daughter's arm 8 times with a heated fireplace tool. Aggressive doesn't begin to cover what I'm planning. Fair enough. Get me authorization, and I'll see what I can find. Brian's next call was to Adam again. Are you a beneficiary of any trust managed by your mother? Yeah, my grandfather's estate. Mom has been the trustee since he died. I want to audit the trust. I think your mother might be stealing from it. You think, or you know? I think. But I want to find out. Adam didn't hesitate. Do it. If she's been stealing from the family trust on top of everything else, I want her buried. By the end of the week, Peter Aldridge had his authorization and was deep into Marjorie Pembroke's financial records. The preliminary report came back on Sunday. Brian, you were right. She's been siphoning money from the trust for years. Conservative estimate, $820,000 over the past 11 years. Used it for personal expenses, property renovations, club fees, classic trust abuse. This is criminal. I'm documenting everything. Brian forwarded the report to the DA's office with a brief note. Additional evidence in the Pembroke case may be relevant to establishing a pattern of behavior. Monday morning, Natalie appeared at his door. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants instead of her typical designer clothes. I know you don't want to see me, she said, but I need to talk to you about Lily. Supervised visits were denied. The judge ruled it's not in Lily's best interest right now. I know. I was there. Natalie's voice cracked. Brian, she's my daughter. I made a horrible mistake, but I love her. You have a funny way of showing it. I thought I was doing the right thing. My mother made me believe that strict discipline was love. That pain was how you showed you cared enough to make your children strong. I know that's insane now. I know that's abuse, but it's what I was taught. And instead of questioning it, instead of getting therapy, instead of breaking the cycle, you passed it on to Lily. I didn't know I needed therapy. I thought I was fine. I thought I was successful and functional. Natalie pressed her hands to her face. I was wrong. I was so wrong. And I'm in therapy now 3 times a week, trying to understand what my mother did to me and why I couldn't see it. That's great, Natalie. Truly. but it doesn't change what you did. I know. I know I failed her. I know I failed you, but I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to be better. Brian studied his wife's soon-to-be ex-wife. She looked broken in a way that might have moved him once, but all he could see was Lily's arm covered in marks. All he could hear was Lily's voice on that recording. Mommy said you wouldn't believe me. I hope therapy helps you, he said. I genuinely do. But Lily is my priority now. Not you. Not your healing. Lily's. Can I write her a letter? Can I tell her I'm sorry? Dr. Nguyen says no contact right now. Lily needs time to process before she deals with you. I'm her mother. Yes. And that's why this hurts her so much, because mothers are supposed to protect their children, and you didn't. Brian stepped back, ready to close the door. Goodbye, Natalie. Brian, wait, please. There has to be something I can do. Some way to prove I'm trying to change. Brian paused. An idea was forming, dark and calculated. Actually, there is something. You could testify against your mother. Make it clear that she abused you too. That this is a pattern, that Lily wasn't an isolated incident. Testify in her criminal trial. Natalie went pale. She's my mother. She hurt your daughter. She hurt you. She's a predator, and she deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison. Brian leaned against the door frame. If you want to prove you're choosing Lily over your mother, that's how you do it. You take the stand. You tell the truth about what she did to you, and you help ensure she never hurts another child. I can't. Then you haven't changed at all. It's not that simple. She's still my mother. I still have feelings. Complicated feelings. Lily has feelings too. Complicated feelings about you. The difference is Lily is a child who deserves protection. Your mother is an adult who made choices. Brian shook his head. Let me know if you change your mind. Otherwise, I have nothing more to say to you. He closed the door, leaving Natalie on the porch. Through the window, he watched her stand there for several minutes before finally walking back to her car. Inside, Lily was awake, sitting at the top of the stairs. Was that Mommy? Yes, sweetheart. I heard you talking. You want her to tell the truth about Grandma. Brian climbed the stairs and sat beside his daughter. I do, but only if she's ready, and only if you're okay with it. Lily was quiet, thinking. Then, Dr. Nguyen says Mommy was hurt too when she was little. That sometimes people who are hurt other people because they don't know better. That's true, but she's a grown-up. She should have known better than Grandma. Yes, she should have. I don't want to see her yet. Maybe later, but not yet. Lily leaned against Brian's shoulder. Is it bad to not want to see my mom? No, sweetheart. It's honest. And right now, being honest about your feelings is the most important thing. They sat together on the stairs, and Brian felt the weight of responsibility settle over him. He was Lily's protector, now her advocate, the only parent she could trust. And he would do whatever it took to keep her safe, even if it meant destroying everyone who'd failed her. The preliminary hearing for Marjorie Pembroke's criminal case was held on a gray Wednesday morning in mid-November. Brian sat in the courtroom gallery watching as Marjorie entered in an orange jumpsuit. Her iron-gray hair was still perfect despite 3 weeks in county jail. She'd been denied bail flight risk, given her financial resources. Conrad Bray, her attorney, was making his arguments about illegal recording and invasion of privacy. Lily had been 8 years old, he argued. A child that young couldn't consent to recording someone. The tape should be inadmissible. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Marissa Delgado, countered smoothly. The recording was made in a private residence where the child had a reasonable expectation of privacy in her own room. She was documenting abuse happening to her. New Jersey's one-party consent law applies. Lily was a party to the conversation, even if Mrs. Pembroke was unaware of the recording. More importantly, the recording corroborates physical evidence. Even without the tape, we have a child with deliberate injury marks and medical testimony confirming intentional abuse. The judge, a stern man in his 60s named Victor Sandoval, reviewed the arguments. The recording is admitted. This court finds that a child's right to document ongoing abuse outweighs the alleged privacy concerns. Additionally, the physical evidence stands independently. Motion to suppress denied. Conrad Bray's expression didn't change, but Brian saw the tension in his shoulders. Without getting that recording thrown out, Marjorie's defense was in serious trouble. The hearing continued with witness testimony. The nurse who'd first treated Lily, the police officer who'd taken Marjorie into custody, Peter Aldridge with his financial analysis showing trust theft. By the end of the day, Marjorie was facing additional charges: grand larceny, fiduciary theft, tax evasion. Brian watched it all with grim satisfaction. Marjorie sat stone-faced through the proceedings, but he caught the moment her mask slipped when the prosecutor played a portion of the recording for the court, and Lily's screams echoed through the room. Marjorie flinched just slightly, not with remorse, but with annoyance. She was a monster, and Brian was going to make sure everyone knew it. After the hearing, Miles Carver caught up with him in the hallway. "Brian, I've been following the case. Can I get a statement from you?" "About what?" "About the additional charges, about what it's like watching your daughter's abuser face justice." Brian considered. He'd stayed mostly quiet in the press, letting the facts speak for themselves. But maybe it was time to speak up. "My daughter survived something that should never happen to any child," he said carefully. "She survived it because she's brave and resourceful and stronger than any 8-year-old should have to be. I'm watching the legal system work exactly as it should, holding an abuser accountable. I hope it gives other survivors the courage to come forward." "What about your wife?" "There are rumors she might be charged as well. I can't comment on ongoing investigations, but I will say this: anyone who knew abuse was possible and did nothing to prevent it bears responsibility. That includes family members who enable abusers." Miles scribbled notes. "Some people are saying you're being vindictive, that you're trying to destroy the Pembroke family. I'm protecting my daughter. If that destroys the Pembroke reputation, so be it. Their reputation was built on a lie anyway." The article ran the next day, sympathetic to Brian, damning to the Pembrokes. The comment section filled with similar stories: people who'd grown up in wealthy families where abuse was hidden behind closed doors, who'd never spoken up because they were taught that privacy mattered more than safety. Brian's phone rang constantly: support from friends, interview requests from national media outlets, and one call from Corey Donahue. "The DA is charging Natalie. Child endangerment, conspiracy to commit assault. She's looking at 2 to 7 years if convicted." Brian felt nothing: no satisfaction, no regret, just a cold certainty that this was necessary. "What are her chances?" "Decent, actually. She's cooperating fully. She's in therapy. She's showing genuine remorse. The DA might offer a plea, reduce charges in exchange for testimony against Marjorie." "Will she take it?" "If she's smart, yes." Corey paused. "This changes the custody situation. If Natalie is convicted of a felony, you get full custody by default. No fight. No court battle. Lily is yours." "Good. Is it, though? Because Lily might want to see her mother eventually. And if Natalie is in prison, then Lily will deal with that in therapy. Natalie made her choices. She has to live with the consequences." Brian hung up and checked on Lily, who was in her room reading with Dr. Nguyen. They'd progressed from puzzles to books to actual conversations about what happened. Lily was doing better, but the scars, physical and emotional, would always be there. That night, Brian made one final call to Marjorie Pembroke's personal assistant, a woman named Elaine Stratton, who'd worked for the family for 21 years. "Ms. Stratton, this is Brian Sheffield. I know this is unusual, but I wanted to ask you something." "Off the record, Mr. Sheffield, I'm not sure I should. Did you know about what Marjorie did to children?" A long silence, then, quietly, "I suspected. Did you ever try to stop it?" "Once, when Adam was 13, I found him locked in the basement and I asked Mrs. Pembroke about it. She told me it was none of my business. She said if I spoke about it to anyone, she'd ruin my career. I have 3 children of my own, Mr. Sheffield. I needed the job. I understand." "Do you?" "Because I've lived with that guilt for 21 years. I could have called the police. I could have done something, but I was afraid, and I needed the money. And I told myself it wasn't my place." "You could do something now," Brian said. "You could testify. You could tell the court what you saw." "I already am. The DA contacted me last week. I'm scheduled to testify at the trial." Her voice broke. "I can't bring back the years Adam and Natalie suffered. I can't undo Lily's injuries, but I can make sure everyone knows the truth about Marjorie Pembroke." After the call ended, Brian sat in the darkness of his office, thinking about all the people who'd known and said nothing. How many chances had there been to stop this? How many people had chosen comfort over conscience? He thought about Natalie, raised in that house, taught that pain was love. He thought about Adam, escaping across the country and never looking back. He thought about Lily, who'd only survived because she'd been brave enough to record her own abuse and walk 17 miles for help. The system had failed all of them, but it was working now slowly, imperfectly, but working. Brian pulled out his laptop and began writing not emails this time. A full account of everything that had happened from Lily's terrified screams in the driveway to the present moment. He wrote it all. The recording, the hospital, the injuries, the investigation, the financial fraud, everything. Then he sent it to the New York Times. 3 days later, the story broke nationwide. Generational abuse in wealthy family exposed by 8-year-old's recording. The article went viral. Support flooded in from child advocacy groups, survivors, people who'd grown up in similar environments. Marjorie Pembroke became a symbol of everything wrong with privileged families who thought money could buy immunity from consequences. And Brian Sheffield became the father who'd fought back. The trial began in January. Snow blanketed Bergen County, and the courthouse was packed with reporters, victim advocates, and curious onlookers. Brian sat in the front row every day, a silent presence while Marissa Delgado systematically built her case against Marjorie Pembroke. The evidence was overwhelming. The recording played in full, Lily's screams echoing through the courtroom. Medical experts testified about the deliberate nature of the injuries, the precision required to inflict them. The fireplace tool was entered into evidence. Lab analysis confirmed biological traces on the tip. Adam Pierce testified about his own childhood abuse, the beatings, the isolation, the psychological harm disguised as discipline. Elaine Stratton testified about what she'd witnessed over 2 decades. Peter Aldridge testified about the financial fraud, showing how Marjorie had stolen nearly $1 million from her own family. And then, on the 5th day of trial, Natalie took the stand. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. She wore a simple gray suit, no jewelry, her hair pulled back. When she placed her hand on the Bible to swear in, it trembled. Marissa Delgado led her through her testimony. Natalie described her childhood, the punishments, the fear, the constant pressure to be perfect. She described being hurt herself when she was 8, the same age Lily was now. She described believing it was normal because her mother said it was. Did you know your mother would physically abuse Lily when you left her at the estate? Marissa asked. I suspected she might be harsh. I thought maybe she'd use some of the same discipline methods she used on me. Natalie's voice was barely audible. I told myself it would be good for Lily, that it would make her stronger. Did you believe that? I wanted to believe it because if I admitted it was abuse, then I'd have to admit what happened to me was abuse, and I wasn't ready to face that. Did Lily tell you she didn't want to go? Yes. Did she scream and beg not to be left there? Yes. And you left her anyway? Yes. Tears streamed down Natalie's face. Yes, I left her. I chose my mother over my daughter. I chose denial over protection. And Lily, her voice broke completely. Lily paid the price for my cowardice. It was devastating testimony. Conrad Bray tried to cross-examine to suggest Natalie was lying to reduce her own sentence, but she didn't waver. She admitted everything. Her failure as a mother, her own abuse, her role in what happened to Lily. When she stepped down, she looked at Brian. He met her eyes and saw genuine remorse there. Maybe even the beginnings of understanding. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Lily was safe with him now, and Natalie would have to live with her choices. The prosecution rested. Conrad Bray put on a defense that was professional but doomed. He argued that Marjorie had believed in strict discipline, that she'd used methods that were common in her generation, that she hadn't intended to cause serious harm. The jury didn't buy it. After 4 days of deliberation, they returned with verdicts. Guilty on all counts: aggravated child abuse, assault, unlawful restraint, grand larceny, fiduciary theft. Judge Sandoval scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. Brian took Lily out for ice cream that night. She'd been following the trial carefully, asking questions, processing everything with Dr. Nguyen's help. Is Grandma going to jail for a long time? Lily asked, chocolate ice cream on her upper lip. Yes, sweetheart. A very long time. Good. Lily took another bite. Dr. Nguyen says I might feel sad about it sometimes. That it's okay to be mad at someone and still feel sad that they're in trouble. That's very wise. Do you feel sad? Lily thought about it. A little, because she's my grandma and grandmas are supposed to love you. But mostly I feel safe, because she can't hurt me anymore. She can't. I promise you that. What about Mommy? What about her? Is she going to jail too? Probably for a little while, but less time than Grandma because she helped the police and she told the truth. Lily nodded slowly. I miss her sometimes. Not the mean her, the her who used to read me stories and take me to the park before she got scary. I miss that her too, Brian admitted. But sweetheart, people can change. Your mom is getting help now. Maybe someday she'll be the person she used to be. But that doesn't mean you have to forgive her or see her. That's your choice. I know. Lily stirred her ice cream into soup. Daddy, thank you for believing me. Thank you for listening to the recording and calling the police. Thank you for not making me go back there. Brian's throat tightened. Sweetheart, you never have to thank me for protecting you. That's my job. That's what parents do. Mommy didn't. No, she didn't. And I'm sorry you had a parent who failed you. But you'll never have to worry about that again. I promise. Lily leaned against him and Brian wrapped his arm around his daughter, feeling the weight of responsibility and love and fierce protective instinct that defined him now. 3 weeks later, Marjorie Pembroke stood before Judge Sandoval for sentencing. The courtroom was packed again. Victim impact statements had been filed from Adam, from Lily Reed by Dr. Nguyen, and from 3 other families who'd come forward with stories of Marjorie's cruelty toward their children at various charity events and social gatherings. Marissa Delgado recommended the maximum sentence, 25 years. Conrad Bray argued for leniency, citing Marjorie's age, her lack of prior criminal record, her contributions to charity. Judge Sandoval listened to it all. Then he spoke. Mrs. Pembroke, in my 30 years on the bench, I have never seen such a calculated, deliberate pattern of abuse. You didn't lose your temper. You didn't make a mistake in the heat of the moment. You systematically abused your granddaughter, an 8-year-old child who trusted you. You used your position of authority to inflict pain. And you did it while believing your wealth and social standing would protect you from consequences. You were wrong. The evidence shows this wasn't isolated. You abused your own children. You stole from your family. You surrounded yourself with people who were too afraid to stop you. And when finally caught, you showed no remorse, only concern for your reputation. This court finds you to be a danger to children and society. I am sentencing you to 25 years on the child abuse charges, to run consecutively with 10 years for the financial crimes. Given your age, this is effectively a life sentence. You will likely die in prison, Mrs. Pembroke, and you will do so knowing that your granddaughter survived you, that your legacy is not one of charity and grace, but of cruelty and cowardice. Marjorie's face remained impassive, but Brian saw her hands clench. 25 years. She was 66. She'd be 91 when eligible for parole if she lived that long. Justice not perfect, but real. Natalie's sentencing came 3 days later. She'd pleaded guilty to child endangerment in exchange for testimony. The judge gave her 4 years with the possibility of parole after 2 if she completed therapy and showed genuine rehabilitation. Brian didn't attend that hearing. He'd said everything he needed to say. Instead, he spent the day with Lily building a blanket fort in the living room, watching movies, eating popcorn, being normal, being safe. That evening, as Lily slept, Brian sat in his office and looked at the photo on his desk, one of Lily at 7, laughing carefree before any of this happened. He couldn't give her that innocence back, but he could give her something better, the knowledge that when she'd needed help, she'd found the courage to get it, that when she'd been hurt, justice had been served, that she was strong and brave and loved. His phone buzzed. A text from Adam. Thank you for everything. For fighting when I didn't. For protecting Lily when my sister didn't. For taking Mom down. You gave our family something we never had. Accountability. Brian replied, Lily gave us that. She's the brave one. He set down his phone and walked upstairs to Lily's room. She was asleep, clutching her stuffed elephant, her face peaceful. The bandages were off her arm now, revealing scars that would fade with time, but never fully disappear. Those scars would remind Lily of what she'd survived. But Brian hoped they'd also remind her of what she'd accomplished, how she'd saved herself, how she'd broken a cycle that had haunted the Pembroke family for generations, how she'd been brave enough to record the truth and walk 17 miles in the dark to find help. She was 8 years old, and she'd already changed the world. Brian kissed her forehead gently and whispered, Sleep well, sweetheart. You're safe now always. And as he turned off the light and closed the door, he knew it was true. Marjorie was in prison. Natalie was facing her own justice. Lily was healing. The Pembroke reign of terror was over. And Brian Sheffield had kept his promise. He protected his daughter, dismantled her abusers, and built a safe foundation for her future. The war was won. The victory, hard-earned and bitterly fought, belonged to Lily, and to the father who'd refused to let her face monsters alone. That's the end of the story. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching.